Great. So thank you everyone for coming this evening. I'm particularly excited about this event, this kickoff to spring in the PNW backcountry. And that is because it's always ski season somewhere. If you just go high enough, occasionally you might need to switch hemispheres, but it can
Right.
always be done. We started this event series. This is actually our second year with NWAC. And it's because, as you know, if you're here, spring is really its own season. And a lot of us are trying out different objectives. We've been waiting for objectives potentially for spring, or we just want to ski as long as possible. And we thought it'd be great to offer an event, not unlike early season events, to kind of help get your spring brain turned on, get you thinking, and give you a chance to talk to some awesome presenters with your questions. So this is kind of our lineup this evening. I'm going to let our presenters give a little bit more of their backgrounds, but I want to thank Payton Schiff, Avalanche Forecaster from NWAC for joining us, and also Trevor Kostanich, professional mountain guide. Um, they are going to kick things off for us tonight with a couple of presentations. After they both speak, then we'll open things up for Q&A. We'll kind of keep Q&A going for even the entire hour as long as there's questions, just so you can get as much out of this as possible. And towards the end of the hour, we'll wrap things up. We'll take a couple more as we can squeeze them in. And when we're done with that, I will facilitate some partner meetings. So stick around to the end if you'd like to meet folks in your region. Other folks are on a particular objective. Got a couple of ways that we're going to help people mix and match and find folks where they have some things in common. That part of the evening might bleed over the hour just a bit. Just a couple more notes before we dive into those presentations. This evening is supporting NWAC. Not They are, of course, your avalanche center, and they provide the forecast. But I mean, I don't work for NWAC, but I just admire them so much and want to give them a shout out. They do so much more than forecasts. They really are the tech innovators in the industry, in my mind. They provide the Avi app. They're working on the national platform for avalanche centers, data collection, education, actually quite a lot of educational programs. And so if you had a chance to make a donation on the way in when you're getting your ticket on Eventbrite, thank you so much. And if you didn't get a chance, really do encourage you to support if you can. That can, of course, look like a donation, their membership program, but there's also other ways like volunteering or events. So thanks for all you do, NWAC. Some quick thank yous to not only our speakers, but a couple of other partners this evening. They just are just great organizations that helped us get the word out. Whether it's Upward Transitions Institute that the Bellingham area that offers women guided, women focused adventures and classes, as well as Backcountry Essentials and Ascent Outdoors, great stores and shops for all your needs. And I want to just relay that Onyx Backcountry not only helped us get out the word for this event, but offered a 60% code, SlabLab 60. So if you're looking to get on their elite or premium plans after their winter sale, you can use this code. And they have some great spring features, actually. Aspect overlay, sun shading. It's great in the field. So check that out. Um, SlabLab, that's me and my partner, Richard Bothwell. We are your hosts for this evening. And so I just wanted to introduce what we do really briefly. We focus on supporting backcountry teamwork. You know, most accidents come down to human factors, and we'd like to see that more proportionally in the discussion and to make it tangible for folks. And so we have been doing qualitative behavioral research for going on 4 years. We publish that for free on our website. This year, we're actually doing some work with NWAC on the Avi app and the website. More Stay tuned for that. And there's a number of free resources. Like these cards are from our Teamwork Toolkit. So that is a set of very concrete exercises. The idea is you can take one and try it on your next tour to get better at teamwork skills, just like you might practice a knot, a kick turn, hard skills. It does take practice, and it can use a little, it's help. We try to make it tangible to actually work on some of those soft skills. So check that out. We also we host a online community that is focused on teamwork and human factors. But really it's great for meeting partners, connecting with like-minded partners, sharing conditions. Of course, we strongly advocate for making observations to NWAC, but sometimes you want to share a photo or something that's not snow conditions, some news, and so it's great for that, especially as the forecast winds down. So choose a PNW region if you sign up at slablab.co, and you can get in for free. And that's all I got. With that, I will turn it over to you, Payton.
Great. Thank you for that intro. Okay. Oops. Technology. Shoot. How did I do this? We practiced. There we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. As Daniel mentioned, I am a forecaster with NWAC. This is my second year with NWAC. I spent a year forecasting in Missoula, Montana as well at the West Central Montana Avalanche Center. I have a avalanche field technician certification from Colorado Mountain College and a Bachelor of Science in Sociology, which actually is pretty useful for this field. As Daniel alluded to, there is a lot of human factor that goes into avalanche forecasting and backcountry skiing. So yeah, a lot to think about with that. I am also a certified overpacker, as you can see potentially in this image. A spring mission I was on a few years ago carried a lot of stuff. So if you ever want to ski with me, you'll be going slow. Oops. Just a quick overview of what my presentation will cover. Shouldn't be too long. I'm just going to go over some quick statistics and go through 4 different spring avalanche hazard scenarios you might encounter, and then leave you with some resources that you can walk away with. So why is it important that we're talking about this? In the last 10 years, 25 people have died in spring, which is April and May, and then a couple more into the summer months. So, despite the snowpack generally being more stable, fatalities can happen this time of year. And then nationally, Washington ranks third in most fatalities since the 50s when this data began being collected.
Wow.
And if anyone is down in Oregon, not quite as many fatalities as Washington, but definitely up there. So let's get into it with some avalanche hazard scenarios. So the first scenario is when it doesn't feel like spring. This is when you get that winter-like weather. The snow generally tends to be warmer and denser, so it does settle more quickly and can heal more quickly, but it can fall on slick crusts. And you can get a lot of new snow avalanche problems like wind slabs and storm slabs. So what you should do in these scenarios is remember that new snow hazard is highest during or immediately following a storm. So it's definitely would be good to back off of steep and aggressive lines for a day or two to give the snow a chance to stabilize, especially wind-loaded slopes. Look out for cracking and collapsing or recent slab avalanches. Those are some of those red flag indicators of instability. Choose more simple terrain, especially when new snow sees sun or rain for the first time. And this is definitely more common to see rain pretty quickly after a wintry storm. Remember that conditions can change with elevation. It might have rained down low and snowed up high, so you have to be paying attention to those changes. And you want to give freshly built cornices a wide berth. They can break really easily. So overall, you just need to be a little more flexible and be able to change your travel and risk management techniques, especially as you gain elevation. The next scenario is when it's really warm and temperatures don't drop below freezing overnight or during the day. Sometimes cloud cover can create these conditions by trapping warm air. This is known as greenhousing, if you've ever heard that term referred to before. Rain, rain can also do this. So when this happens, liquid water enters the snowpack, and robust surface crusts don't form, and you can sink in, kind of like you can see in that photo of that snowmobiler sinking pretty deep into the snow. Wet loose avalanches are the most common avalanche problem type that you'll see in this scenario. This You'll see this most, especially if there is recent snow on the ground, and then this problem will kind of run its course after a few days. And then the rule of thumb is typically 3 nights without an overnight freeze. You'll start to see larger, more destructive avalanches, like wet slab avalanches. This is when water moves down through the snowpack and weakens layers within. It can pool on crusts and create deeper instabilities. During this time, a lot of times you can also see deep, persistent slab avalanches. This avalanche problem type isn't very common in the Pacific Northwest, but it can happen. So in this scenario, travel advice, use the rule of thumb. If you're punching past your boot tops, maybe take that as a sign to back off of steeper slopes. So make more conservative terrain choices when the snowpack warms and weakens. You want to watch out for roller balls, chunks of snow falling. You want to reduce your exposure to overhead avalanche terrain, especially during these intense rain or sun cycles. Once again, give cornices a wide berth. They can weaken significantly during these times and fail without warning. Wet slab avalanches and deep persistent slab avalanches are super hard to predict. So it's just best rule of thumb is to be more conservative with your terrain choices, back off of steep terrain until the snowpack refreezes. And you definitely want to be watching out for not only being on steep slopes, but being in the runout zones for where our large avalanches, like the one in that photo, can release. The next scenario is kind of the opposite. This is when temperatures never get above freezing and nothing softens. You just have these really slick, hard surfaces that are frozen. That especially when this scenario happens after a period of warming, and those surfaces that had gotten warm refreeze and they just get really slick. They can be really strong and supportive to the weight of a human. Avalanches are very unlikely in this scenario. They're not impossible, but they are unlikely. Depending on previous weather, there might be winter-like instabilities on high north-facing slopes with new snow. You might see some small, less destructive wet loose avalanches during sunbreaks, but not very likely. During this time, this is an opportunity to try bigger objectives, but your biggest hazard is long sliding falls. So this is where you want to be carrying sharp equipment, crampons, ice axes, whippets, those sort of things, especially if you are planning on doing some volcano travel in the PNW. Remember that conditions can deteriorate in a very short time frame. This can be even within a few minutes if the sun comes out or if it starts to rain. So if you see that happen and you do see surfaces start to soften, be prepared to dial it back. And the last scenario is the one we're all looking for in the springtime. This is that glorious corn cycle that you'll hear more about when Trevor speaks. Corn, just briefly, is a thin layer of melty snow that creates a really nice, smooth ride. This is when surface crusts build on the surface and overnight, and then they break down during the day. Avalanches are more unlikely in the morning, but they can become more likely as the day progresses, especially on sun-exposed slopes. And if enough water does move down within the snowpack, depending on how thick that surface crust was and the density of the snow underneath, you can start to see some of those deeper instabilities that I mentioned before be activated. Once again, less common in the Pacific Northwest, but not impossible. So during this scenario, timing and aspect are key, especially when the sun is strong. You want to be paying attention to how temperatures are rising through the day. You probably want to consider traveling earlier in the day. If you are traveling later in the day, traveling on colder aspects, like northerly aspects, south-facing aspects will be the first to destabilize. So plan your trips and keep that in mind around that. If you want to start avoiding steep sun-exposed slopes when that corn snow moves beyond the corn that we're looking for and starts to get a lot more moist, wet, and sticky. When it's sticky, it's probably getting beyond that cycle that you're looking for. And then once again, limit your exposure to cornices. They can still break and soften during the daytime heat. And then keep in mind that residual heat can actually linger after the sun has set. So if you're still out when it gets dark out, just remember that the snowpack is not immediately restabilized. Some region-specific considerations given this specific season. The majority of the snowpack throughout the Washington Cascades and around Mount Hood are relatively locked in already, and that's thanks to a prolonged warm spell we had in March. There's just this like really bomber crust that's super thick down, depending on where you are, um, within generally the upper portion of the snowpack. Um, there is a deeper snowpack in the northern Cascades, and they have a little bit more layering going on, as you can see in that upper photo there. That was a recent snow pit dug by another forecaster, showing a little bit more layering, a little bit more variability. So if you're traveling around in the northern Cascades, you might see more of those deeper instabilities or recent dry snow avalanche problems. Um, Also, cornices are larger in the northern Cascades. They're pretty cut back in further south or on the eastern side of the Cascades, so less of a concern. Also, keep in mind that snow coverage is lower than normal. This is probably something a lot of us are pretty in tune with. It's been a little bit of a tough season, snowpack-wise. So this is creating some access challenges, creates a lot more non-avalanche hazards, and it creates less snowpack information overall. It's harder for us forecasters to get out. It's harder for other folks to get out and be submitting observations. So just keep in mind that if you are planning on getting really far back into isolated terrain, you might be in uncharted territory, snowpack-wise. And so plan for extra time to get in and out of the mountains due to some of those access challenges, getting over creeks and down logs and maneuvering around rocks, those sort of things. Washington is still recovering from the atmospheric river and windstorms we experienced way back in December. So a lot of blowdown across roads, a lot of damaged roads. Yeah, definitely plan some extra time around your day. And bring those self-arrest tools that I mentioned before, especially if you are planning on doing some volcano travel. So in summation, I always think of this meme when I'm thinking about all of these things, and sometimes you just kind of got to simplify it. So in summation, pay attention to the weather. If it snows, take into account that the wind might be blowing that snow around. If it's sunny, take into account the temperatures, including the overnight temperatures. And if it rains, maybe just stay home. Pay attention to snow surfaces. Is there new or recent snow on the surface? Are surfaces supportable? Are they refrozen or are they not? Are you mushy? Are they mushy and you're sinking down into them? Remember the five red flags of instability, which if you've taken a avalanche level 1 class, this might sound familiar to you. And they really do. You really can simplify it down to those five things. The red flags are new snow, blowing snow, wind being blown around by the wind, recent avalanches, cracking and collapsing in newer recent snow, and a rapid rise in temperatures, which includes rain on snow as well as sun. And then it really comes down to honing in your terrain selection skills, which is probably another thing that Trevor will cover quite a bit of. This is something we should be doing all year round, no matter where you are, what you're doing. It's just as important in the spring to, yeah, get a lot better at your terrain management. All right, so just to leave you with some resources that you can use once the forecast has ended and you're looking for information of your own to plan your day. Obviously, I'm pretty biased towards NWAC resources, but they really truly are great. We make our resources geared towards this sport, and so it's relevant data. If you have spent any time on the NWAC website, there is a weather data map where you can look at all kinds of weather stations and select any one of these station labels if you're looking for a particular piece of data. And you can track any of the weather elements you're looking for, see what's been going on in the last few days. There is also a list version if you don't like map view. There is also the mountain weather forecast that NWAC issues daily through May 3rd. This is great because it's weather tailored specifically to mountain weather. So it's a lot more relevant than like city weather that you might see in just like a National Weather Service forecast. And then there is the observations page. A great update that happened recently was you can now view observations from other zones, not just NWAC zones, if you're looking at this page on NWAC's website. So you can scroll around and see what other people are seeing out there. You can submit observations anytime throughout the spring, throughout the summer, even after we have finished forecasting for the season. And you can also look for similar trip reports on SlabLab and other social media channels that will give you some really relevant information as well. As far as weather resources go, there's a million and one weather websites out there. I personally really like windy.com. You can move around a map, find any location you want, select that, and you can compare weather models and look for similarities and differences. You can find nearby webcams and see if that is showing you anything relevant. This tends to be a little more helpful in the winter when you want to see if there is snow on the ground. I really like the visuals of windy.com. There's kind of all of these different weather elements that you can select there over on the right-hand side that gives some really nice visuals that I personally really like. And the other great thing about it is there's a free version that will give you 6 days out of weather, which to me is plenty amount of time to get an idea of what's going on in the coming days. This is another resource that it's not as great because you do need the paid version of Caltopo. But if you happen to have the paid version of Caltopo, you can view things in 3D, and they also have, it's called the Sentinel Weekly layer, and it is a satellite layer that looks like this image. This was a satellite image taken on March 27th. I think it's a really great way to kind of start building an idea of what snow coverage looks like. It's been pretty handy this season, trying to get an idea of where there is still snow on the ground and what's accessible. I am also biased towards Caltopo in general. It's just the mapping app that I personally have always used. But Onyx is really great. I believe Onyx also has satellite imagery as well. And then another resource is once NWAC finishes publishing forecasts for the season, there will be this general avalanche information product posted for the entire summer on the website. And this is pretty much just a great summary of those scenarios that I covered. Other avalanche centers usually post something pretty similar if you're traveling in a different area. So you can always go back to this and reference it if you have forgotten anything. And that is it. The last resource that I want to leave you with is this website. The Canadian Avalanche Center has basically all of those scenarios that I covered again, and then some. There's a lot more info that, if you happen to just have blacked out during my entire presentation, you can go to this website and get all kinds of great info and get a, um, a rerun of this presentation. I can leave that link in the chat for anyone that wants to check it out. And that's what I got for you.
Awesome. That was so helpful. Thank you, Peyton.
You're welcome.
Yeah, folks we're going to do Q&A, just a reminder, after both talks, but if you want to fire off some questions in the chat as you're thinking about them, go ahead and we'll get them answered in a little bit. But I'm just going to turn things right over to you, Trevor.
Okay, thank you. Just quick check with Daniel. Are you seeing presenter mode or?
No, now we're looking at just the presentation.
Well, fantastic then. Okay, great. Wanted to start by thanking Daniel and the team at SlabLab for organizing this evening's event, and hopefully people are able to scrape some nickels and dimes together to our Avalanche Center because as Daniel alluded to, and Peyton's probably being too humble, but I did see some board members in the audience tonight. We're extremely lucky to have NWAC. The more I operate in different zones, including Canada, I just realize how fortunate we are with the level of detail of the forecasts. And also wanted to share a thanks to everyone here because a lot of that information does come from observations. And I think that our community's done a great job of sharing more obs, even a year like this that's been, pretty abysmal for snow. We're still actually per capita of people out touring, getting a decent amount of observations. So thank you guys. So quick intro for me, I think just simply love long ski traverses in the Cascades. I guess a little more detail. I've been guiding professionally for 16 years. Most of my guiding career is actually with Pro Guiding Service here in North Bend. Still good friends with that team and love to share info. Went on my own a few years ago, and I've been touring for about 30 years. So kind of a fun fact. I learned to tour in the mid to late 90s when I actually converted to telemark skiing because at that time that's what we thought you had to do to ski tour. But I like to share that because I was friends with some gung-ho. We were in college and we were pretty gung-ho lift skiers. And it may have saved my life because we just weren't good enough tele skiers to be throwing ourselves in 40-degree terrain. I was pretty content to be on 25-degree terrain. So I live in North Bend, lived on Squamish Pass previous to moving down here. Spent seasons in different mountainous parts of the globe, but pretty hard to get me away from the Cascades. And this sort of winter when it's, obviously pretty wet, pretty warm, challenges me a little bit that way, but I still love it. We just got so much terrain here. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can still get higher to where there's actually pretty robust snowpack. So the second season, that's kind of a phrase some of us like to use. It's really as simple as when our lifts shut down, then we're kind of, for some of us that split our time lifts and touring, we're kind of only touring, in what we call the second season. It's typically, here in the Cascades, even at Snoqualmie Pass, we get our deepest snowpack historically right around March 8th. You get to mid-mountain at Alpental, and we're actually like seeing historically our deepest snowpack more like mid-April. So we definitely tend to have a fat snowpack as kind of this forward-looking society that kind of drives me nuts. We all want to ski in October and we want to golf in March. But skiing in the spring is typically fantastic. And the little bit of good news I do have tonight, we're actually in really good shape up high this year. So for those that have been here this winter, Peyton alluded to the, December atmospheric river. This has not been a dry winter. It's actually been quite wet. So when you get up in elevation, especially on our volcanoes, but even above 6,000 feet throughout most of the northern half of the state, we're in pretty good shape. Clearly in really poor shape down in our lower kind of and low mid elevations. So other pros, Peyton did a great job of reminding us that just because it's spring doesn't mean we have to or that we should turn our brains off. We do have avalanches, but generally speaking, it's a lot better stability, especially once we've gone a few days without precipitation, or all of a sudden really just dealing with more of a surface wet loose problem. Good days, long days, and then something I wanted to focus on next um, is corn snow. But before I get to corn snow, I have to be somewhat equitable and share a little bit of the cons with our second season, and that is it can rain, especially this month. I find April to be kind of the transition month, still getting quite a bit of precip. And then long approaches, especially this year with bad low elevation snow, and then even being like cut off from some of our access points due to road washouts. So back to something more fun, corn snow. I'm now going to dive into a little bit. What is it? When's the right time to harvest it? And how can we get it when it's most ripe? So first and foremost, what is this corn snow? I mean, why do we call it corn snow? How does it form? It's we really need consecutive clear nights, and ideally clear nights and clear days. And so what's happened is we really need that surface to start freezing from the top down, and the deeper freezes we have at night, kind of the better. And especially when we start to get multiple days in a row of clear weather, cold nights, that freeze is, pretty much just locking all those snow grains together, almost as like to simplify as an ice crust. And then during the day, that sun starts to warm up the surface, and it breaks apart the way those grains are like centered and bonded to each other, and it leaves kind of these nice rounded grains that some brilliant connoisseur of food decided to call corn snow way back when. But as Peyton said, it's actually super fun. I still prefer powder, but I have a lot of friends that would rather ski corn. When you hit it when it's ripe and it's fast, your skis go kind of right exactly, skis and board go right where you want them to, and can be quite rewarding. And this process, the longer we have these clear nights and clear days, then the better the corn system gets. And I share that because soon I'm going to talk about where in the Cascades we kind of get corn at what time in the season, and where we get it more often. And definitely where we have clear weather, which is a certain side of our Cascades, tends to be a much better corn skiing zone. Okay, here we are. It's sunny. This is actually near the Snoqualmie High Peaks, just on the east side of the Limas, just above where Peyton lives and forecasts for us on the east central zone. What do we think? Does this look like corn snow here? Sunny, see the ski kind of breaking through. This is very often what we deal with at the crest, and this is definitely not corn snow. This is pretty recent storm snow that just has that surface freeze, so we need a lot more nights in a row for that freeze to get a lot deeper. Instead, we're just kind of breaking through the top and then all of a sudden into that recent storm snow that's quite soft. We do have a name for this, and it's also falls under the culinary vocabulary. We like to call this creme brulee, and it is not a good thing. Again, creme brulee, frozen top, but unfortunately, once that melts, which can happen early in the morning, then you're sinking through that cream in a bunch of mush and do have really quickly elevated avalanche hazard. Okay, when is corn season in the Cascades? So it does vary by which side of the range you're on. This picture here is a zone that unfortunately, and I'll talk later about what zones I think are going to be in this year. This is the Teanaway. Pretty popular slope here. This is the west side of Earl Peak. That's Stewart Mountain in the background. Often a great April corn skiing location. This year just never really got the snowpack there. There's still some lingering snow and some shady spots there, but going to be a real brief, if at all, corn season. So east of the crest is really where I tend to start harvesting corn, and sometimes it is the only place in the Cascades that I'm skiing corn. And that's back to when we talked about how corn snow forms. East of the crest, we just get a lot more clear weather, a lot more consistent freezes at night, sunshine during the day. Here on the crest, like Snoqualmie Pass, Stevens, Baker, we just continue to get so many storm systems. Sometimes they're maybe not dropping much precip, but the clouds prevent that really cold freeze that we want at night. So at the crest, sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. Doesn't matter if there's a lot of snow or not a lot of snow, just the amount of consistent weather that we have coming at us that might not get all the way to our eastern zones, but does hit the crest. We are lucky here because we do have high peaks, and those are the volcanoes. So often we can ski corn on volcanoes well into our summer months. I did want to share this little sneaky midwinter appearance because the more I've thought about this, put this presentation together, I've probably skied more corn at Snoqualmie Pass in January than I've skied in the springtime. And for those of you who've been around here a while, January tends, we just get some high pressure, long dry periods. But corn does form during that. You really need to be for sure south and usually a little steeper aspect so there's more impact from the sun. Yeah, so now I want to dial it in a little deeper. We just talked about seasonal progress. Typically we get that corn starting east, moves to the crest, and then eventually as we get warmer late spring, goes higher into the volcanoes. But I want us to start thinking about where we chose to ski that day and then how we can try to get the best skiing based on quite a bit of different factors. One is elevation. So this is really temperature related. Lower in the elevation, the quicker it's going to warm. Sometimes up high, it might not warm. This has actually been kind of hot in my brain right now. I've got couple friends that want to go ski on Rainier tomorrow. And for those that are paying attention to the weather, it's actually been pretty ideal to have this presentation right now because we've been in a pretty long period of clear weather. But unfortunately at the crest, we're fighting that creme brulee the last few days. And especially Sunday, Monday, we really didn't get a freeze at all. So it was just mush, wet make. Did get real cold last night and today, so we did see some decent freeze happening. I know some people were skiing high on Rainier Sunday, Monday. That's not going to be doable today or tomorrow because it's just not going to get warm enough. When I say doable, it's not going to be safe because of slide and fall hazard. So elevation, we're lucky here in the Cascades because we have quite a bit of elevation, especially on our volcanoes that you can play with. Aspect super important. So where does the sun rise? East. So we can actually sometimes work some parts of volcanoes where we might intentionally get an early morning east, even maybe northeast run on corn, and then start to pivot around the dial more southwest west, which is going to happen later in the day. This aspect one has really been kind of interesting to me as time goes on. South is typically where we're skiing on our volcanoes. I have a personal bias that I actually think south is the worst aspect to ski corn on our volcanoes because you have to time it almost perfect. And even if you time it perfect, you're going to ski real firm bulletproof at the top of your line, and you're typically going to ski wet mush at the bottom. And that's just because that solar impact is really strong. Now, east is an aspect I actually really like because the sun hits east first thing in the morning, so it starts to soften early. But by the time the air temp in the day is warm, the sun is now south, even southwest, and that east doesn't bake as much longer. And I've had some really enjoyable like corn descents on our volcanoes where you feel like you're skiing corn most of the run. You know, Emmons on Rainier is one, Park or Boulder on Baker is another. But it's tricky because most of us are always on the south sides, and that's because of infrastructure. So most of our road networks are south sides, and that's because naturally we have less snowpack that lingers deeper into the year on the south. But think of that, especially as our season gets later. You know, sometimes it actually makes a lot of sense to be skiing on the north sides of these volcanoes when we get into summer. Slope angle. So a flat surface is not going to have, you know, quite as much impact from the sun earlier in the spring. You know, we get into like our summer solstice, our sun's pretty high in the sky, so it's starting to impact even lower angle. But especially like right now in April, steeper south facing is going to have more impact from sun and therefore ripen into corn quicker than a lower angle. Our north, when we look at aspect, we get out of north aspects. A steep north aspect almost gets no sun. Flatter north aspect will get a little bit of sun, especially late spring. Weather factors, kind of talked about temperature with elevation. Another one is cloud cover. So cloud cover, it both reduces the amount of freeze that we want at night, and then can also, on the contrary, can reduce the amount of heat in the day. So you kind of got to be watching when is cloud cover. Cloud cover can be helpful if it's south facing and you feel like you're too late to ski it because it's already corn. Cloud cover can then help slow down that real wet mush factor that I personally don't love on south aspects. And then wind. This is one actually kind of looking at even for tomorrow. You know, if there's more wind, it's going to prevent that snow from softening and keep that snow pretty firm. So this is, I think, all these factors that when we're actually out on our selected spring tour, or wherever that might be, these are how we're trying to time the best corn skiing. So make sure some people are awake. Want us to be thinking about it's a hot summer weekend. Let's even say it's 4th of July weekend, 85 degrees in Seattle. Where is the good corn? Where would you go skiing? This to me is like prime time to be on the north/northeast sides of our volcano. This is northeast side of Adams. Also, I know we're struggling with access up to Mowich Lake, but kind of the flat Russell area on the north side of Rainier can also be really good in the summer, in a hot summer day. So quickly wanted to touch on some special gear that's more unique to our spring season. And really, like the one thing I think you've got to have is ski crampons. And for those of you who skied with me, I think you got to have them almost any time of the year in the Cascades, just because of wind crest or whatnot. But when we start to get into, you know, deeper freezes, it's also when we might want to have the ice axe and the boot crampons. As Payton kind of indicated, you know, this is more that I think what do we call it? Yeah, scenario 3, bring something sharp. So it's great because we don't have any avalanche hazard, but we do have real like slide and fall hazard. But this is often the tools that we need when we're going up the mountain in the morning when it's still firm. And then I know I've talked a little bit about some glaciated runs on the volcanoes, and our volcanoes are glaciated. So just wanted to add, once we start progressing onto glaciers, also need to have, you know, the full crevasse rescue gear and the knowledge to how to use it. Okay, here we are. Early spring 2026. So what zones do I think will be good this spring? Here we're looking at a zone I often think is decent. This is the Enchantments. Little Annapurna on the right. Boy, Payton probably knows a little more about the zone than I do. I know getting to them is all dirt. There's probably a little bit of scrapping up high, but I kind of think this is almost just out from my understanding of lack of snowpack far east. So not this year, but a good one to keep in mind, typically for April. Typically, like I shared, I love the Teanaway, love the Enchantments, love the Chihuahuas. And then there's kind of Silver Star area east of Washington Pass. I'm going to get to Washington Pass in a bit because that's also one of our shining stars this year. Okay, so this is different. I call the Stewart Range a little different than the Enchantments. This is more looking at the Sherpa Glacier here on Looker's left of this photo. And There's actually still a bit of time left here for, these are a little bit more advanced runs, but a little bit higher. And because there's some smaller glaciers there have been holding snow. Mount Daniel, um, one of the centerpieces of the Central Cascades and kind of borders the crest where we see a lot of good weather on the east slopes. This is looking at the northeast side of Daniel, and I think we're going to have a bit of skiing on Daniel. It's always just a game of timing when the Clallam River Road is open, and I have a feeling it's going to be open real soon because this is a year real poor low elevation snow, but pretty decent up high. So when the road opens, doesn't mean you're going to be strapping your skins on at the highest lake trailhead. You're still going to have to boot up the trail probably to Peggy's Pond, but fantastic skiing and a real big massif with lots of options. Okay, the Eldo Inspiration Plateau. This is kind of heart of the North Cascades off Cascade River Road. I think we have, quite a few weeks left here, longer approaches. I know people are on El Dorado recently and you're already walking on dirt through the boulder field. But up high, huge snowpack, 3 to 4 meters of snow on the Inspiration Glacier. So in good shape. What's not in good shape is where I said yes into May. That's Moraine Lake. And this isn't just this year, but something we're really seeing with as climate change continues to reduce our lower elevation snowpack in the spring. Moraine Lake's part of a pretty common tour known as the Forbidden Tour, but Moraine Lake's pretty low. It's only 4,000 feet. And even in decent years, we're finding it more and more technical to get down to Moraine Lake. And expecting that's going to be the case already, even right now. Okay, so our winners. We do have a couple winners this year, and Washington Pass is one of them. So for those who've been looking at NWAC's climatology, even April 1st, this was after all the rains that washed away our snow at Skolmy Pass. Even April 1st, Washington Pass is above normal. They're at 110% snowpack. So again, it's that moisture. We had a lot of precip, and Wa Pass is benefiting from that tremendously. This picture doesn't highlight that very well. This is actually a picture from November this year, but at least I snuck in the road real close to where Washington Pass is. Some other inside beta here is they've actually DOT started clearing the road a few weeks ago, and they've made pretty good progress. The bad news is they are learning a lot about landslides and infrastructure challenges on the west side of the pass. And this is only hearsay now, so there's nothing super accurate in what I'm about to share, but there's some speculation that DOT might open the pass from the Methow Valley community west. So won't be able to get there from the west side, but might be able to get there. When I say there, I mean not only Washington Pass, they might even get it open to like Rainy Pass for quite a while this spring. And there's a lot of snow back there. So obviously a mecca of touring options. The other winners are volcanoes. This is south side of Glacier Peak. Hard to see, but just tucked on that left ridge line is Mount Baker. But these peaks, obviously Rainier, I know some climbing rangers at Rainier are pretty blown away how much snowpack the upper mountain has. So in really good shape here. I think that'll take us into early summer. Obviously the next couple months of temperature will dictate exactly how long we have there. But there is some spring season to be had. And I think this current week of weather has me pretty excited to transition into second season. So that is it. Thank you for paying attention.
Thank you, Trevor. I think I've never felt more inspired to move to Washington than I do actually after those two talks. So thank you both. I feel like that was a hot take on aspects, or maybe I'm just too locked in the South. We're going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A now. I'll kick us off with a question, but go ahead and pop any that you might have in chat, and we'll get it asked to these two. And we can be informal. I think you're also welcome to jump in between questions too and unmute if that's your preference. So, one thing that caught my attention in your presentation, Payton, was just the idea of things changing so rapidly, like even in minutes. And wondering your thoughts on just like how do you think about that, like mitigating that, something coming on that fast? Is it in your plan for the day? Is it always have an extra aspect you can get to quickly? Like, how do you think about being able to change so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of called it like kind of always having a little bit of a plan B route that keeps you out of avalanche terrain, out from below avalanche terrain, if you think bigger avalanches are possible. Going in, having a well-formed idea of what the weather is going to be doing and knowing like, okay, it was cold overnight, but it's going to be a really sunny day. Um, we might be moving a little bit slower because the access is a little bit tough. So, planning some sort of alternative route into your day that will keep you on safer or lower angle terrain um, is something that I would always do for sure.
Thanks. We have a question here in the chat. WSDOT is still showing a road closure on 20 right at Diablo Lake. How does that impact the road to Washington Pass, even if DOT opens the gates?
Yeah, that's their winter closure location on the west side, and that is true. That's still closed at at Diablo. And again, I'm not trying to be a formal messenger here. I'm trying to share a little stoke from some people who I do know from DOT, but like little bit, I know that will stay the closure, especially because of infrastructure improvements that are needed along the road. I think they're going to allow bicyclists to bike up from the west side, but everything I'm hearing is we will have to access the snow from the east side. So when they open that road, instead of opening it between, Mazama, or it's usually Silver Star Gate and Diablo Gate, but it sounds like because there's a lot of road infrastructure needs on the west side, they're just going to open the east side and I think keep it closed at Diablo. But I also don't know exactly where those landslides and closures are, so there's maybe a chance they start to sneak it open closer to Rainy Pass from the west side, but don't
Hey,
know.
hey Trevor, that the rock slide's right at like Ross Dam trailhead. So I was trying to remember. I think I remember it the gate being a little bit further.
Yeah, yeah, they'd have to get, through the rock slide just to get us up there
Yeah.
regardless. So don't know. And there might even be some new findings farther east, closer to Rainy Pass. But I think, yeah, I don't know. What I do know is they started early and they've made good progress. And think we might have access. Again, I have no idea on dates, but sooner than
Okay.
normal via the east side.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Mike, I saw your hand go up. Do you want to jump in with a question?
Sure. Hey guys. Hey Trevor.
Hey, Mike.
Um, I'm curious, like how many nights, maybe like El Patel area, El Patel backcountry, like how many nights of cold temperatures would you think it would need to like be okay? Like it kind of cooled off today, yesterday, like you said, and then it's gonna get warm again. Like what are you thinking for like by Sunday? Like it will be Sunday, Monday, it looks like it cools off again. Is that gonna be enough or is it still just gonna be mush, do you think?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it depends how much new snow we're dealing with. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, at the crest, on south aspects above that knife hard March 25th crest that Peyton mentioned, I mean, now with settlement, there's actually not that much snow on that right now on the crest. I mean, let's call it 5 inches. But if there's only 2 inches, that can quickly freeze. The problem is, like, especially north aspects have 10, 12 inches. But generally speaking, less snow will get there sooner. More snow, you
Right.
got to fight through the creme brulee phase a little bit for longer. But I think this freeze we got, I don't know, Peyton might have know of people who are out today. I don't, but this freeze last night was pretty strong, pretty cold, and it was cold today. So I actually think this is going to set stuff up really well. Like I think Thursday, Friday, there's gonna be corn skiing even near the crest. It might be a little bit of a timing thing where you just get it for a few hours and then all of a sudden you went through into the cream part of the creme brulee. But I think we're gonna get pretty deep freezes um, these next couple nights with softening.
Yeah, I'd back that up. I haven't actually heard of I don't think any of us were out on the pass today, but we have kind of more or less gone back into that scenario four, which is that typical spring cold nights, warm days cycle that you're looking for. So I do think odds are good that
Yeah.
skiing will be
Then
pretty
it
good.
stays warm, looks like over Thursday night, right into Friday, and then maybe gets cold again Saturday.
Yeah, the problem is we get weather again on
I
the
know.
weekend, so
But it
precip
look,
is what really hurts this. But this is the reason I think we're going to see corn even at the pass is, I mean, it's going to be 5, 6 days of clear, which we usually don't get, especially at the crest. I mean, Mike, even I was out, even Sunday morning, there was like a superficial crust where like, if you were skiing south at 8:30 a.m., you might have felt like you were skiing corn. I wouldn't dare call it
yeah,
that.
better than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Cool.
I think something what Trevor is alluding to when he's talking about clear nights is even if temperatures do stay a little bit warmer, not having clouds in the sky allows this
The
heat to
moisture.
literally escape the snowpack and cool it down quite a bit. So, and then wind can also help too. I'm not quite sure what the wind forecast is, but that should help cool things down.
I think you actually just answered one of the questions that came up in chat, so that's perfect.
Oh,
We I think just for time we'll maybe call this the last one, and I'll ask it of both of you. And if there's anything you do want to add on in terms of closing messages or other things left on your minds, Peyton or Trevor, please feel free to share that too. But we had a question here. I like learning that if weather is clear day and night, 3 times that could result in good corn skiing. Are there other rules of thumbs or guidelines that either of you use for planning or risk management? Are there any sort of like broad things like that that you find helpful to big picture decent planning?
it's a pretty broad question. Um, I would say for me, and this is kind of going back to my presentation, like you can simplify it and just, I'm a professional. It's been a long time since I took a level one avalanche class, but those 5 red flags of instability, like I still fall back on that. Um, New snow, wind blowing snow around, rain on snow, sun on snow, um, and then those signs of instability like recent avalanches and cracking and collapsing, like those 5 things, like that combined with making really good terrain choices is like ultimately what it comes down to for me. So it's not really a rule of thumb necessarily, but good way to simplify things for yourself.
Trevor, is there anything that you'd want to add or any like closing thoughts broadly that you want to add for folks?
Well, I think, yeah, to piggyback on what Peyton said, I mean, those 5 red flags are important. And then the simplest for me is like snowpack does not like rapid change. Like, if we give it slow change, i.e., it hasn't snowed on it for a few days. So that's another one of those I like to look at. It's not just how many nights was it clear, when was the last snowfall and how much was it? Again, once we get into this cycle, if we only get a couple inches of snow, that's actually going to heal more quickly than if we get like 6 to 8 inches of wet snow. And I mean heal, start to get back into that freeze thaw corn cycle. So yeah, less rapid change on the snowpack. I mean, what was so brutal last weekend on the pass was we were skiing winter powder Friday morning, and then it was really hot Friday afternoon. And so no surprise, there was a lot of avalanche activity because we had a lot of new snow and then a lot of heat. Got warmer Saturday, but there's almost more activity Friday just from that much quick change to it. So I think, the more consistent the weather factors are, the better, just because there's less rapid change. And there's real quick, 'cause I saw one that's easy. Fess asked about explain the word Cascade Crest. Really, like to me, and I guess there is some personal bias on how you define this, but it's really, the high geographical point as you're going west to east through the Cascades. And that crest is usually pretty well defined by boundaries between the Mount Baker Snoqualmie and the Wenatchee Okanagan and or different counties. But that crest is really where we see, a lot of our weather systems stop, drop a lot of moisture on the west side and top of the crest, and then lose moisture, dissipate, become clear on the east side of the crest.
Thank you so much. Well, we've hit the hour, so I want to let folks go. But Peyton, Trevor, thank you again so much for taking the time and sharing all your knowledge with everyone today. Thank you everyone for attending. Huge thanks to NWAC. Please do support them if you can. And I hope this was helpful and that everyone has a great second season. Thank you.